That would be north central to the current boundary.
That's correct.
And how much distance is there between the current project area boundary and the Indiana bat roost?
I don't have this figure offhand.
Can you give me an estimate?
I would not like to speculate on what the distance would be. However, I can attest that turbine locations and facilities locations are in compliance with recommendations from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what those recommendations are?
These recommendations are outlined in the technical assistance letter that was shared by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. That should be documented in possession, but then also a document that I will defer review and finer details I would defer to Mr. Curlinger, who will testify later.
Did Republic Wind discover any other species of wildlife that resulted in or was a factor in a redesign of its facility?
It is our intention to reduce and minimize impact for species altogether within the project area, resulting from our facilities layouts. But again, regarding the very fine specifics, but then also specific regimes taken for different species, I would defer to the TAL, but then also witness Curlinger for his expertise.
All right. When was Mr. Curlinger first hired by Republic Wind for any purpose?
Mr. Curlinger was hired in preparation for this hearing.
Okay, and when did that occur?
This would have occurred this year.
Mm-hmm. Would you say March of this year?
I wouldn't offer a specific date, however, it was this year, following filings made, and in preparation for this hearing.
He was hired in the spring of this year, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. He's already answered the question.
No, he hasn't. He just said that he doesn't know the specific date, and I'm asking him whether it was in the spring.
Your objection is sustained. He's answered to the best of his knowledge.
Right, so, going back to my question, were there any other wildlife species discovered by Republic Wind that resulted in a layout change for its turbines?
I'm going to object to the form of the question too with the use of the word other. I don't think there's a foundation that a specific change was made for one wildlife issue.
I asked him whether there was any other species that discovered resulted in a layout change. I didn't presume it was a layout change because of it. I'm trying to find out whether it was a layout change because of any other species of wildlife that's been discovered. It's a very simple question.
Reread the prior question, please.
I'll just rephrase to make sure it's
Thank
clear.
you.
Mr. Carr, did Republic Wind discover any species of wildlife besides the Indiana bat or the bald eagle that resulted in an adjustment of its project area boundaries?
I'm not aware of another species that is on the same protection level as the eagle and the Indiana bat. And we consult with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to determine buffers for these species.
Okay, going back to my question. Was there any other species of wildlife discovered by Republic Wind that resulted in an adjustment of the project area boundaries?
Could you reread the prior answer, please?
answer. I'm not aware of another species that is on the same protection level as the eagle and the Indiana bat. And we consulted with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to determine buffers for these species.
Yeah, see, the witness limited his
Yeah.
question to just,
Mr. Van Clay, I know.
yeah.
If you could just answer his question specifically, and if you want that question right back, you can have that right back.
If I can simplify my response for you, I'm not aware of any other species for which we applied these sorts of protection buffers.
Thank you.
So your question was, did we reshape the boundary pursuant to one of these buffers? I'm not aware of another buffer.
Thank you. Since 2012, let me just back up a little bit. You're aware that Republic Wind obtained a list of eagle nests that are in the vicinity of the project area from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Around the time that Republic Wind did its wildlife surveys in 2011, 2012.
I'm generally aware that the project would have consulted with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to understand existing nests prior to performing studies and during this consultation.
Mm-hmm. And you're aware that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service gave Republic Wind a list of the eagle nests in the area that it was aware of at the time?
That would appear to be accurate.
Okay. In 2011 or 2012, did Republic Wind do its own survey of the project area in order to see if there were additional eagle nests in that area?
To my knowledge, that is the purpose of those studies that we performed in 2011 and 2012.
Okay. So since 2012, has Republic Wind done anything to look for other eagle nests in or near the project area?
I would defer to the application for any further studies regarding birds generally, regarding migration, regarding breeding birds in the area. However, I'm not aware of a specific eagle study that was performed beyond the dates you've listed.
All right, so to answer my question, you're not aware of any surveys that Republic Wind did after 2012 to look for eagle nests in or near the project area?
Beyond those discussed in the application, that's correct.
And the application just refers to 3 eagle nests that were on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service list provided to Republic Wind around 2011, 2012, correct?
I'm not aware of that specific figure, but if you're referencing the application is correct.
So unless the application identifies any eagle nests that were located or identified by Republic Wind, Republic Wind doesn't know. Now, let me just back up. Based on your answer, then, is it true that Republic Wind is not aware of any other eagle nests besides the 3, or besides those identified by the Fish and Wildlife Service, and besides the one that is described in Mr. Shield-Townsend's testimony?
To my knowledge, aside from those listed in the application, per those 2011, 2012 studies, aside from the testimony wherein the alleged and confirmed eagle location exists, That was in Shield Castle's testimony. But I would refer to any correspondence with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service directly that we've shared. And I believe there might be another nest outside of the project boundary that was discovered outside of any eagle nest survey in recent years. However, again, I don't know the specifics, and I'll refer to correspondence we've had, the documents shared with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
All right, with regard to the other eagle nest that you're aware of that was just outside, or that was outside of the project area boundary, can you give me a general description of the area where that was found?
I don't know that information offhand. I would defer to Curlinger for specifics there.
How did you come to know about this eagle nest?
If my memory serves, we had a separate study underway. I don't recall which subject matter area that was. However, the consultants in the field identified eagle, and to my knowledge, followed it to its nest, which landed outside of the current project boundary.
In which direction from the project was the eagle nest found? North, south, east, etc.?
Again, I don't know that information offhand. I wouldn't like to speculate.
Now, what was the name of the consultant that found the nest? What company?
I believe the consultant's namesake was Cardno. Again, that's to the best of my knowledge.
And why was Cardinal looking, or what was Cardinal doing field work on the day that it observed the eagle nest?
Cardno was a consultant that we employed to perform the wetland report, but then also to produce the environmental assessment for the project pursuant to Ohio Power Siting Board standards.
And did Cardinal find this nest while it was doing these studies for Republic Wind?
That is my understanding.
Did you report the existence of this nest to the Power Siting Board?
We are not asked to report nest locations to the Power Siting Board. We consult and collaborate with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Did you?
And the nest was reported to those agencies.
It was reported to them?
Yes.
Okay. But it was not reported to the board?
Ask and answer, objection.
All right, I'll withdraw the question.
What was the time frame under which that discovery was made?
This nest was identified during the production of application-specific reports. This would have been prior to the initial submittal in 2018. I believe that was in February. But again, this nest, among the others that were identified in the area regionally, were used in determining a buffer in consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and ODNR, which helped guide the project in establishing a boundary and facilities layout that would minimize impact to the species.
Did Republic Wind receive any response from the Fish and Wildlife Service after it reported the existence of this eagle nest?
Yes, we continue to collaborate with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
And what was the nature of the response that you received from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? Was it in the form of a letter or email or some other sort of communication?
Following the reporting of this nest, we would have had perhaps exchanges in person and meetings with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Ohio Department of Natural Resources. I'm not sure specifically which format a response would take from those agencies. So I don't have that answer for you offhand.
With respect to any response that you may have received from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service concerning the reporting of this eagle nest, if you had received any written response, would you have included it in the docket for this case?
Yes.
And do you recall submitting anything to the docket in this case concerning that eagle nest?
I would refer to the docket for absolute clarification there. However, the correspondence we had with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources was guidance on, again, this half-mean internest buffer and helping us to determine the project boundary and where facilities were planned.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to mark the local residents' first exhibit. I would like to mark it as LR Exhibit 1. May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may do so. Mr. Carr, I'd like you to take a look at exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this document?
This appears to be an email exchange between myself and OPSB staff.
And this email was sent by you to the Power Sighting Board staff in response to some information requests from the staff, correct?
That's correct.
I'd like to direct your attention to your response to information request number 15. The page numbers are not, the pages are not numbered, but it would be 6th page of this document.
Yes.
All right, and that the information request was how many bald eagle nests are currently in vicinity of the project? How close is the nearest nest? How recently was this information obtained through field work? You see that?
Yes, I do.
And the response was, there are no documented bald eagle nests within the project area. The closest documented bald eagle nest is approximately 1.9 miles southeast of the nearest turbine, and this data was collected during 2018 raptor nest surveys. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Now, with respect to the eagle nest referred to in this answer, is that the same eagle nest that Cardno discovered, or is it a different nest?
The response to this question speaks to that nest specifically. Do understand that in previous questions I was asked to speculate who was in the field performing which study. I did inform you at that time that, to the best of my knowledge, that was the consultant. However, it was the consultant that performed, per this response, it was the consultant that was out there performing the raptor surveys who discovered this specific nest that we discussed previously.
And which consultant was that?
I would refer to the application. I don't have the name offhand, and again, I wouldn't like to speculate which consultant specifically performed that work.
And this was the raptor survey that was done specifically for the Republic Wind project?
Yes.
And was there a report on the raptor survey conducted by this consultant that was included in the application for Republic Wind?
To my general knowledge, reports of this nature are pursuant to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recommendation and ODNR recommendation. So this report would have been included, it would have been performed in order to give those agencies the information they needed to collaborate with our project team in determining ways to minimize impacts for these species. I'm not sure whether the Power Setting Board is the appropriate recipient of a study like this. This study was performed in compliance with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the state agency as well.
Okay, so going back to my question, was this report submitted as part of the application for Republic Wind?
Again, I'm not sure offhand, per my last answer. I'm not sure offhand. The study was performed in compliance with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. This is used to continue those conversations with those agencies.
Okay, my question was, do you know whether this report is part of the docket in this case for the application?
Objection, he's answered, he's not sure.
I haven't heard that yet. He keeps saying he submitted it to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I can't get an answer.
Gentlemen, okay, Mr. Van Clay, is this report on the docket? Do you know if this report is on the docket?
I am not sure, per my answers to Mr.
After 2012, did Republic Wind ask the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service whether it was aware of any other eagle nests that were not identified to Republic Wind prior to that time?
my general knowledge is that any correspondence and collaboration that took place between 2012 and 2018 and to the current day would have revealed those nests. And to date, we have acknowledgement from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that our surveys are adequate and complete.
Okay, go back to my question. Did Republic Wind ask the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service after 2012 whether the Fish and Wildlife Service was aware of any other eagle nests in or near the project area?
I'm again going to answer to the best of my ability with my general knowledge of these conversations that subject matter experts at Apex have had with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm aware that collaboration continued, has continued with every update to the project, and that U.S. Fish and Wildlife shared their updated data at every point, and that we shared updates to our data at every point regarding these species.
Your Honor, could we ask that the witness be directed to answer the question?
Yeah, Mr. Carr, so I understand you're explaining your answer, so if you could just start off by with a yes or a no to that original question, and then I'll allow you to supplement your answer. I understand what you're trying to say here, but to the best of your knowledge, do you know whether or not that information was provided?
Yes. To my knowledge, that information from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was provided. Now, to qualify that answer, we have subject matter experts at Apex that we consult with in order to work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And so I don't have this email offhand. I'm not aware of a specific email, and so that's why it's sought to qualify my response.
What email are you talking about?
You seem to be asking for correspondence where we have asked explicitly U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for their data. And I don't want to give any false idea that I'm aware of an email or of a document where we asked for that specifically. But I did want to express that we have collaborated with this agency over the years, that they have continued to provide us with updated information.
All right, so do you have knowledge of a specific request that Republic Wind made to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service asking Fish and Wildlife Service whether it knew of any of the discovery of any new eagle nest after 2012?
Per my last response, I do not have knowledge of a specific request.
And did Republic Wind make such a request of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources after 2012?
Again, I'm not aware of a specific request. However, do understand that collaboration has continued with these agencies, wherein they've shared every bit of updated information they have, and the project has done so as well.
Over what interval do those communications normally occur?
Your Honor. I apologize. Couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking, typically, is there monthly scheduled communications? It's just a course of practice? Or does it just occur, do these communications occur on a as-needed basis?
I'm going to object also, Your Honor, just for clarification, that Mr.
We can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Object also, Your Honor, just for clarification, that Mr. Carr is the development manager for this project. He has persons who conducted these studies and are in contact with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and ODOT. And the questions that go to the fact that what they are doing, I think he's indicated that he doesn't have that at his fingertips about what they've done, or it's not within his direct knowledge.
Yes, but my question was not pertaining to a specific correspondence, but rather just course of practice. Whether or not you have scheduled quarterly check-in meetings Or are these just kind of on a as-needed basis when something is relevant to share?
So earlier stage correspondence with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources would have been intermittent, periodic, and of course that correspondence in those meetings would be reported. However, as we close in on final designs, that's more of an as-need. We provide both the federal and state agencies with our proposed layout and use this to gather whether there are any recommended changes from those agencies. And so I suppose the answer is both. We have had intermittent meetings with both of these agencies, but also have provided facilities layouts as needed to ensure that the recommendations shared by U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources are current.
Okay, and just so that I'm clear, when you say intermittent, meaning scheduled on a periodic basis?
Perhaps not so formalized, but yes, scheduled periodically.
Has Republic Wind asked any of its participating landowners for the project about whether they know of any eagle nests in or near the project area?
Again, Your Honor, I want to object to the breadth of that question because it assumes that Mr. Carr is familiar, or the people that work under him that do these reports in the field report to him every issue or every time they speak with someone or conduct some type of investigation.
Your Honor, first of all, I object to the coaching from counsel to the witness. But secondly, he is the project manager. He is overseeing all of this. I presume that he would know. If he doesn't, he can say so.
I agree. Mr. Van Clay, I'm going to overrule your objection. And Mr. Carr, you may answer to the extent you know.
To the extent of my knowledge, no. We have not asked specific landowners whether they're aware of nests. I don't believe this is one of the requirements of these studies which are performed. But then additionally, we are not at liberty to disclose locations ourselves of nests to landowners once we collect that data.
Yeah, I didn't ask you whether Republic Wind informed the landowners about any nests. I asked whether Republic Wind had asked the landowners about any nests they were aware of. Do you understand that question?
And I think Mr. Van Clay, he answered that question.
Yeah.
And then he stopped.
I just want to make sure because the part he added to the answer, I think, made it unclear to me as to whether that was the question he was answering rather than the one that I asked him.
The intention was to qualify and to